Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a video review. This one's going to be another Apple Arcade game review, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at Fantasian, Fantasian. Apologize if I'm not saying the name correctly, for the Apple Arcade. Plus, I want to give my thoughts on the movie Godzilla vs. Kong that I just saw, though. And if you're interested in any gameplay footage of me playing Fantasian, I'll have a link down in the description down below. You can click on the card that will appear up on this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. When Apple announced their Apple Arcade back in 2019, though, it was sort of an interesting approach, and during that time they announced several different types of games coming to it. One that they showed during their presentation was a game from the developers of Mistwalker, which is the studio made by the original Final Fantasy creator. Basically called Fantasian, and at the time they showed off some videos of it, and the whole idea was that the game would be set in the course of a diorama, if I'm saying this correctly though, where they made these set stages and all that stuff for your character and the world to explore and all that stuff. Now, for the most part, when the game was announced, it really kind of flew under the radar until until sometime in the end of March and around April, when apparently we got two new games that came to the Apple Arcade, though, that I think to some degree caught people's attention. One was Platinum's World of Demons, a game I do enjoy on the Apple Arcade, and the other one was this one, Fantasian, though. And after spending some time with the game, though, I will say, along with World of Demons, I personally think this is one of the best Apple Arcade games that I have seen in a while, though. But that doesn't mean there aren't some caveats here and there. So why don't we get started with the pros and cons, and we'll start off first with the pros. And the first one we have to look at is the visuals. Now, I will say the visuals may not have the same kind of art style as Platinum's World of Demons is, but I will say from a visual standpoint, though, the game looks good. I gotta give credit to Mistwalker for creating the game using these diorama sets to basically for your character to move around, though. It's really impressive what the developers Mistwalkers did, though. And for a game that's on the Apple Arcade, it's actually not that bad, though. And I certainly would be interested to see what developers can do if they put their time and effort into it to make more games, put some time and effort in the visuals in terms of for the Apple Arcade. Don't get me wrong, gameplay is still important. I'm not disputing that, though. But I will say from a visual standpoint, and even for something on the Apple Arcade, I will say the visuals look really impressive. In fact, I would go as far as saying that they kind of feel like a throwback to sort of like the PlayStation 1 RPGs back in those days, though. Next thing I do want to talk about is the gameplay, and for the most part, the majority of the time, the gameplay follows a classic, JRPG and all. So the gameplay wise is, if you played other JRPGs, you'll basically get sort of the idea of how the game works and all that. That said, though, there is one thing I did notice that they added that is an interesting mechanic that they put in for an RPG, and I'm curious to see if other developers that develop RPGs, whether it's JRPGs or not, will implement this. And one of this is that at some point in the game, you'll get this device where, I have a hard time saying the name and all, but when turned on, you can literally avoid certain battles and all. What happens is that it will take these monsters or enemies, though, and put them into another dimension. Now, granted, as of right now, there are only a limited amount of space that you could put these monsters in. And eventually, when you're comfortable enough, you can fight these monsters, and this could come in handy in terms of, ranking up like enough experience points and all that stuff. What's interesting about these battles is that when you fight the enemies in this different dimension, you have the ability to basically, be able to either skip a turn, have the enemy skip a turn, or increase your attack power and all. And this is where the combat kind of comes into this as well, which is whether you use this approach or not. Basically, when you're attacking the enemies, though, you sort of have to line up your attack, though. It's very easy and all that stuff, but what's interesting is that depending on how well you line up, you could basically find yourself in a situation where you're hitting maybe multiple enemies at once and doing a good amount of damage and all that stuff. It's a really interesting approach, though. It's a very interesting approach they did with the classic JRPG approach in terms of gameplay. It's a really interesting idea that Mistwalker did, and I'm very curious to see if this is implemented maybe in other RPGs down the road or anything like that. And last but not least, I do want to talk about is the controls. Now, I mentioned this when I did a review of World of Demons, is that when it comes to touchscreen controls, they are usually can be a hit and miss. Sometimes they're downright terrible. Sometimes it comes off as it works, but using a controller is an actual controller, like, you know, something like this. Though this is the Kenshin controller for the iPhone and all. I have this for the iPhone, and then there's some that works just perfectly fine. Fantasian is an interesting game because this is a game where you can either play with the controller or using a touchscreen, and it works perfectly well. The touchscreen works perfectly fine when moving your character around. You could point to anywhere on the screen, and when it comes to the battles and all that stuff, it's done in a way that it feels as though you could play this game either using the touchscreen or the controller. So I will say the controls in the game are really good, and I gotta give credit to Mistwalker for designing the game in a way that can be enjoyed either with a touchscreen or a regular controller. So this is the type of game that I feel like, regardless of which control scheme you go with, touchscreen or controller support though, it works perfectly fine for a game like this. And that's certainly, in my view, for a game that you could play on mobile devices or, you know, your iPhone, iPad, or even an iMac. That is definitely a very good thing indeed. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 2, which is the cons and my thoughts on the movie Godzilla vs. Kong. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our video review of Fantasian. Again, apologize I'm not saying the name correctly, for the Apple Arcade. So now that I gave you the pros, why don't we get started with the cons? And there are really only 2 cons I could think of in regards of Fantasian. The first one I do want to talk about is sort of moving around the area and all. Now, I mentioned how the game's controls work really well and all, and that pro still stands no matter what, though. The game is very easy to control, very easy to use, regardless if you're using the touchscreen or controller support and all that stuff. And that certainly is a good thing, though. But at the same time, it can also make moving your character around the world and all can be a little tricky at times. This has to do with the fact that mostly the game uses sort of a fixed camera in a certain way, and that sort of like hankers back to the day, like I mentioned before, hankers back to the days of like the PlayStation 1 when we had RPGs and JRPGs back then, though. Basically, you know, pre-rendered backgrounds and all. In this case, Mistwalker's using dioramas to make these levels and all. And I found that to be a little bit difficult, especially when using a controller, because you're trying to move in one area and then suddenly the camera will automatically rotate and it'll make you think you're going this way and all that stuff. Again, it doesn't make the game unplayable, though, but it is a little annoying every now and then, though. One thing I did notice with my time with the game, though, is that I did notice the fact that it wasn't as big of an issue when using like the touchscreen rather than using controller support, mostly because when you touch an area, though, your character will automatically move and all that stuff, compared to how it is with a controller, where in this case, you know, you're using like, you know, the analog sticks over here to try to move around and so forth. Again, doesn't make the game unplayable, doesn't, or anything like that. It just, the controls, moving your character around is going to be similar to how it is back in the PS1 era, particularly with games like, you know, like Final Fantasy VII, the PS1 Final Fantasy VII to be exact. Not a bad thing, just annoying here and there. And the last thing we do want to talk about is sort of the battle and all. Now, I talked about how the combat, I enjoyed the combat. It's classic JRPGs with a little bit of a twist to it, though, and that certainly isn't a bad thing. But if there is one little annoyance I have with the combat, though, it's the fact that you only have 2 options when you go into battle. You can either choose to attack or you have a second option where you have to rotate, like if you use your spells, or you could use your items and all that stuff. There isn't like you have your attack here and you have your items / spells and all that stuff. It would have been nice if they had something like your attack here, you have your spells up here, and then you have your items up here. Though it doesn't ruin the game, at least for me though, but it is a little bit annoying though, and I would have liked to see them kind of added sort of like maybe like another option to basically another, like, you know, an option to pick rather than having to constantly switch out your items for your spells and all that stuff. Only have like 2 different like options and all. So to me, it's a little annoying, but again, it's a minor con and not really a thing that ruins the game for me or anything like that. Overall, Fantasian on the Apple Arcade, I think, is a really good JRPG for something like the Apple Arcade, though. The visuals look really nice. I like the whole diorama approach that Mistwalker took on this game. The game has the classic JRPG, but adds a little twist here and there, such as the ability to store the enemies in the world, and you could battle them maybe a little bit later. And the game, for an Apple Arcade game, I'm really impressed with how well the game does in terms of controls. Regardless of whether you're using the touchscreen or controller support, though, the game controls really well, though. I will admit, like I said, it can be a little tricky at times to sort of maneuver around. This is mostly because it kind of feels like a little bit of a throwback to sort of the PS1 era in terms of like RPGs, like Final Fantasy VII is a good example of that, though. And I would have liked to see like the ability to have like one thing for you to use as your attack option, one is your spell option, and one for your like item option, rather than have just one is your attack, one is your spell, and you have to switch that out to put items and all that stuff. So there's a little bit of annoyance in the battle system, but nothing that really ruins this game or anything like that. It's definitely one I would definitely recommend if you have the Apple Arcade service or anything like that, though. It's going to be really interesting to see how Part 2, I believe, last time I checked, there's going to be a Part 2, how that plays when they finally release that one. As for whether or not this will come to any other systems or anything like that, I don't know how big of the exclusivity they have with Apple or anything like that, so it might be permanent just for the Apple Arcade, or we could see it pop on other systems like the Nintendo Switch. I mean, Oceanhorn 2 made their way over to the Nintendo Switch, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But either way, if you have the Apple Arcade, this is definitely one game I would recommend to download, whether it's on your iMac, iPhone, or iPad, or anything like that. And I definitely, like with World of Demons, this is definitely another type of game I would like to see more being added to the Apple Arcade service. So I do hope that we see more of these type of games on the Apple Arcade. But either way, Fantasia, in my opinion, is a good game indeed. Okay, before I end this video, I do want to give my thoughts on the movie Godzilla vs. Kong. Now, I just recently came back to the theaters, though. I haven't been to the theaters for a long time. Last one I saw was Sonic the Hedgehog, and that was back last year. This was like around before the whole COVID-19 situation started, though. So it was I was a little curious to see how things were going to play out, especially when going to the theaters and all. Outside of my local theater, where I had to actually go up to the concession to buy tickets, nothing really has changed much, at least as far as I'm aware of. Then again, I saw a 12:15 showing. I don't know how it would be like during the like around like if like 6 o'clock on the weekends or anything like that, or even later. But either way, I finally got a chance to see Godzilla vs. Kong, though, and I will say it is a good movie, but I will admit, though, that the main selling point of this movie is obviously seeing Godzilla and King Kong duke it out on all that, and you certainly will not be disappointed, though. I like the story itself isn't bad. I like how they explore, the center of the earth, or Kong's origin and all that stuff. But obviously, if you're seeing this movie, you're seeing it for the famous Godzilla vs. Kong and the kaiju battles. And for the most part, you mostly see Godzilla fighting Kong. You don't see him in any other you don't see him as much compared to, say, King Kong, and you do see King Kong battle other creatures here and there throughout the movie, though, and both Godzilla and Kong do team up to fight an enemy. Spoiler alert for those who have yet to see the movie, but basically they fight Mega Godzilla and all that stuff. So it's a really, really enjoyable action, really enjoyable, kaiji, monster movie and all that stuff. And obviously the big selling point is going to be the fights, and I think that's the big one right there. So if you enjoyed the last several Godzilla movies, though, the first one, Godzilla King of Monster, Kong Skull Island, you'll probably like Godzilla versus Kong, though. One thing I do want to point out is that it's very interesting. This movie did very well at the box office compared to Godzilla King of the Monster. There could be many reasons why. One could be that there wasn't really... one thing was Godzilla King of Monster came out before COVID. After COVID, people want to bring some form of normality back, and obviously this was it, though. Not to mention it's also available on HBO Max, though, and seeing how well that movie did along with Wonder Woman 84, it's still amazing. It's doing well. Either way, if you enjoy the other Godzilla films that Warner Brothers did, you'll like Godzilla vs. Kong, though. Okay, this concludes my video review of Fantasian for the Apple Arcade, plus my thoughts on Godzilla vs. Kong. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Fantasian on the Apple Arcade? Have you tried the game out yet? Do you enjoy it? Do you enjoy the gameplay? Do you not enjoy the gameplay, though? Do you like the whole twist they did with the classic JRPG? Do you think they should bring more games like this to the Apple Arcade in any way? And do you think this game could make its way onto other platforms, like, say, the Nintendo Switch, for example? And what are your thoughts about Godzilla vs. Kong, though? Did you see the movie by any chance, whether it's in theaters or on HBO Max? Did you enjoy the movie in any way, though? Did it live up to your expectations? Do you think it's the best one on the MonsterVerse that they're doing, or do you think the other ones were better in any way? And do you think we'll see another Godzilla movie or another King Kong movie from Warner Brothers? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I've put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!